It's rare that you can offer a piece of advice that is easy to do, that will not only produce instant gains, but will set yourself up for long-term improvement. Before that, I'm going to make a confession. All right? So, I feel bad about this to this day. I was a coach years ago of an elementary school team. At the time, I was trying to become a GM and it was just a side gig. But honestly, teaching those kids helped me a lot to understand chess and even teach chess. A lot of the principles of the dojo that we have going on came from that time of me being a teacher. So how did I cheat? This was a systematic cheating. It's just systematic. We'd go to these events and these kids, as kids do, will blitz out their moves. Now, the first thing to understand is there's kind of like a social pressure when the kid across from you starts playing super fast. And they'll even say something. They'll be like, you start sitting on your hands and be like, move, move. They'll get angry at you. The legal thing I did was I told these kids, like, we are going to win because we are going to think. And these kids were not like super smart or anything. They were just normal kids. It's just normal kids. And I was like, we're going to win if we think. So I really ingrained that message. Then how I cheated was, I was back in the day when you had coaches were allowed to wander the halls. Dude, I would go like this. I just look at them and I would go like that. I mean, it's definitely cheating. I don't even, and I think I rationalized it in a way that like, well, maybe this is cheating in some way, but I'm helping them with the long-term life goals because then they're going to become better thinkers. And now maybe that's even true, but it was definitely cheating. And we just destroyed those events. We were just mopping those other kids up. And those kids had coaches and they were working and yada, yada, but they weren't thinking. The pressure, all the emotions and everything at the event prevented them from thinking. And we just slowed it down enough that we had a massive competitive advantage. What am I talking about today? What we have observed at the dojo. Players, especially under 1,200 FIDE, so that's like 1,600 lichess or something like that, are moving way too fast. Way too fast. And I'm going to show you guys an example of that. Now, these are adults. So it was surprising to me to see this same behavior in adults. Now, the first thing I want people to understand, what we're talking about here is engaging your deep thinking, what Kahneman calls the system 2. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, but when you're online, let's just say, it's easy to get distracted and really hard to immerse yourself into it. And in a way, you become a kid again, just like the kids I described at the beginning. And your mind is racing and it's hard to stop yourself from moving. Further, kind of like a kid shouting at you to move on the other side of the board, the opponents you face in these events are also moving ridiculously fast. So it creates this weird pressure as if you have to move, as if you would be a real jerk if you were playing slower. And these are longer games. Your opponent agreed to play this longer game. Let's show an example, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about how to apply the fix and what we at the dojo are going to do about it. This is our beautiful games viewer, if Dojo 2.0. We're going to be looking at Chris's game. Chris annotated the game, and Chris is working hard in the 1,000 to 1,100 cohort. Okay, so these are players that, you know, the average rating, for example, on chess.com is like 750. These are people above the average. They've done some work. And in the training program, they are doing a lot of the steps. So these are not just some people kind of hanging out on the internet. No, these are people that are working on their game. Okay, so what I want you to observe, and this comes really through a technological breakthrough where we are able to bring in the lichess timestamps into our game annotations. And the game I'm showing to you now is, I have so many of these. I do once a week, I do the graduation show, people who've gone from one cohort to the next, and I look at some of their games. And I see this all the time in the cohorts below 1,200. Look at the timestamps. This game was 30 minutes plus 20 seconds a move. And I want you just to see White's time is actually, I mean, both players up to move 14, their time is going up. They are gaining time Oh, my friends. Okay, so I'm going to go through this game, but I want to stress a couple things. Moving slow really is about a muscle of being able to think slowly. It is not something that just comes automatically, but especially if you're aware of it, then you can force yourself to slow down. A metaphor could be a lot of times if you go to like some kind of exercise class or weightlifting class, they will tell you to engage your core. If you're not familiar, if you're feeling kind of flaccid and loose, you might not even be able to know what it would mean to engage your core because you don't have a core to engage. So you'd be like, boss, what are you talking about? And similarly, I think a lot of people in the dojo have been like, well, I just don't know what to think about. Now, we can talk about what to think about. I think David and Coaster are even going to do some videos on that. But for right now, what I want you to observe, and especially when we go through these moves, is it has nothing to do with not knowing what to think about because you're being pushed to move faster by your body and your mind. So key finding, psychological, people burn more calories when they're doing system 2 thinking. If you're just playing blitz all night, you're not going to spend any deep calories. It's not going to hurt your body. Your body does not want to think. It wants to move quickly. It does not want to spend the calories that it takes to do deep thinking. So it's really important to see that about yourself. The next thing is, it's so great to use the timestamps. Myself, when I play over the board games, I always write down the times on the score sheet, but this is really cool because especially you as a player and then me as a coach, I can see like, oh, I can see exactly what's going on here. By going over your games, you can be aware of what you are doing and you can recognize, oh, my hand just wants to move. No. At the bare minimum, you must force yourself to slow down. And even if you feel in that moment that you are thinking about nothing, that's okay. The first step is simply slowing down. Let's get into this game a little bit. All right. So, Black, first of all, plays great developing moves to get to this position. Everything perfect so far, nothing wrong. Now, notice though, White has not thought at all, okay? And then plays a bad move, b3. Black instantly plays bishop g4. Notice, Black has some thoughts here, and bishop g4 is not in itself a bad move, but the first things that we should be thinking about is with b3, we should say bows. We got suddenly some stuff to think about. We got some stuff to think about. There's a lot hanging all of a sudden. I want to get into it a little bit more. Beautiful development by Black. Okay. And we get this nice position, and White plays another blunder with queen d1. At least it doesn't look right to me. Okay. So, rook a c8. Black is playing perfect chess. So, one nice thing about chess is you do not always use system 2 thinking. You can use system 1 intuitive thinking for a lot of your moves, and Black has done pretty good so far. I really wish Black would have thought after b3 because b3 looks wrong. That's your clue to start thinking. But all these other moves developing on playing with principles, fine, fantastic. Okay, White plays another funky move. And now look, it's time at this point to say, well, boss, we should be winning this game. We should be winning this game. And now it's time to really think, do some variations. What's happening? Yada, yada. Okay. Queen a5 might be a good move, but we need to think about it some more, right? Look at that. It was basically 20 seconds, right? Okay. White doesn't think about it at all. Plays queen d2. Maybe knight d5 or something is what they should try. Not even thinking. Now notice, Black, Chris, is a developed enough player that they understand, at least in the notes, that this is a critical moment, right? But look at the next move. b5, not taking any time at all. So when the critical moments come, that's the time to be like, well, 5 minutes, 7, especially if we feel like we can knock the guy out here, right? And it's definitely time. It's time for this guy to go. And then in the game, we make a tactical blunder, and this is what happens. And honestly, when I was teaching those kids, it was all about tactical blunders too. So what do we say? At this level, especially below 1200, where the games will be decided is on the tactical stuff. So when you ask me, what should you think about? Well, it's mostly going to be about your hanging your pieces. Okay, that's going to be the big one. I want to stress though, you want to be thinking more in general anyway. And then at that point, you just want to be talking to your pieces and saying like, bows, where are we going? Who's my good piece? Who's my bad piece? What are some of my plans? Neither player is doing that in this game. Okay, let's fast forward a little bit. Look at that. Look at those times. And I want to stress, I'm not picking this game to make fun of this one game in particular. I have seen countless examples of that here at the dojo. And these are people, like I said, these aren't chumps. These are people looking at their games. These are people who are doing the requirements. What am I trying to say? These are working at their games, but there's an easy fix. You must learn to slow down and use system 2. And again, yes, we can talk about what you should think about, but by going over your games, you'll see A, I'm moving too fast, and B, in all of these positions, there was so much more to think about. I'm going to leave that there, but I'm going to say what we're doing at the dojo. We are instituting a new and cruel policy, and that is this. The lower cohorts, first of all, we are allowing them to play faster games, right? At a higher cohort, it has to be 90 plus 30. 90 minutes plus 30 to count as a classical game. Play a classical game, you get 1 dojo point. You annotate the game, you get a dojo point, okay? But for all of these games, we're saying if you did not use 50% of your time, doesn't count. And that way, even if you tell me, Kraai, there was nothing to think about. No, well, the thing that I want you to understand is, first of all, there is probably something to think about. But 2, just the act of forcing yourself to sit and not move is going to be essential for your chess improvement. Mine too, if I was moving that fast. In the higher cohorts, what you're really seeing often, and this has been the case in my career and many other GMs, they think too long. But that is not the problem that we're seeing here. Once you have, let's say, learned how to engage your core with the metaphor I used earlier, that's how you can deepen your game. Right? So for example, the kids I taught, and I cheated, dude, I totally cheated with doing this little trick. We were crushing instantly. So that was like an example of the immediate gain that you will have once you start slowing down. But more important, long term, what you're setting yourself up for is the ability really to do some deep thinking that will then propel you up the ladder. Okay, and like deepen your understanding of thinking about positions, tactics in that competitive environment. And not only that, but essential for the dojo, of course, is going over the games. And like here, you want something that you have substantively thought about in order to go over it, right? To have that richness of quality of thought in the game before you then spend some time looking at it. So there it is, system 2 thinking. It is the thing that is holding players back in the under 1200 level. And it's not just with kids, it's also with adults.